Hey, this is Justin Hampton with the CompTool. It's time for another CompTool Tuesday. CompTool Tuesday, if you're not aware, it's kind of a casual conversation around what's going on in the compensation space. So I'm kind of thinking of it as a cross between Car Talk and one of those other talk shows. Car Talk, and what was that one I was thinking? Well, anywho, doesn't matter which one I was thinking. Last week tonight with John Oliver, though he's much funnier. But today I think there's a couple of things that have happened in the last week or so that I think are worth mentioning. And the first thing we'll just kind of hop into, it's one that's been front of mind for a lot of folks. It is what are we going to do in New York? New York is going to make us post our pay ranges now. That was scheduled to go into effect on May 15th. I actually talked about it last week and gave my prediction that was going to pass and start on May 15th. Well, that is not the case. There was a session where the city council met, or the legislation met, and they voted to postpone that to November 1st. I'll make a couple changes to it. But I think what we're still hearing is a lot of companies are looking to get ready for making those changes and putting the job descriptions in, or job salary ranges in the post. And a lot of people are really trying to figure out, what does that mean? How do we manage this? And when we look at some of the Squirrel data, we're starting to do some research on that to be able to guide and provide some advice on what are we seeing the majority of companies do. A lot of companies are, talking about, do we provide a subset of the range? Is it the full range? Do we just list the starting number, the ending number? And without making any kind of legal recommendations or providing any legal guidance, I think what we're seeing most companies do is provide a subset of the range. So if if the range goes from 80 to 120,000, and they actually have $90 to $110,000 budgeted, rather than posting that 80 to 120 range, they're going to post the 90 to 110. Now, again, that should not constitute any kind of legal advice or any legal recommendations. You need to kind of talk to your counsel and figure out what's best for your organization. But I do think that's what we're seeing a lot of companies doing across the U.S. And that could vary from state to state, city to city, because different cities have different rules. New Jersey City, for example, has different rules than other parts of New Jersey, and New York City will have different parts than New York, and so on. But one of the interesting things that came up as I was doing some research on this is, California is actually looking to expand. No surprise, California. Oh, wow. I'm surprised they weren't first. But California is actually looking to expand their Senate Bill 973, which is the bill that was originally, set forth that the employees can request the pay ranges from employers. So there is Senate Bill 1162 that's going to build upon that. And when it comes specifically down to, the pay transparency and listing the salary ranges in the job postings, and I'm over here reading the bill. So what it does, just at a high level, what the Senate Bill 1162 is going to do is that is going to require the employers publish on job listings the applicable salary or hourly wage. And right now that's different because candidates don't have to do that, or the employers don't have to do that unless they're asked. And the idea behind all these pay equity laws or these pay transparency laws are to remove the wage gap and gender gap. I actually find it a little bit interesting, the way that some of these bills are structured. And I actually think, and this is me postulating, that the way that California's bill is currently written, where an employee has to request that salary range, I actually think there's a good chance that is actually probably done more to increase the wage gap than to decrease it. And the reason for that, and I think even potentially sharing the ranges may not always necessarily improve the wage gap. Now, there's a lot of research that says that it does, and I wouldn't say that it definitely does or definitely does not. But here's the idea behind it. Here's why I think this. There's actually been a lot of research that says, this is coming from the Harvard Kennedy School of Women in Public Policy Programs. There's, over the past 2 decades, laboratory and survey evidence have suggested that men are significantly more likely to negotiate, or more likely to engage in salary negotiations than women. Now, think about that. The whole idea behind this, so there's another article about why we are moving towards this pay transparency. And this article says, research shows that when workers have more information about the potential terms of employment, specifically potential salary ranges, it helps them to negotiate. Now, I am taking 2 different articles from 2 different contexts, but if we look at those and we say, okay, the idea is to provide, what we know is that more transparency provides more opportunity to negotiate ranges. But if we also know that men are more likely to negotiate those ranges, well, potentially some of these bills actually have the potential to actually increase that wage gap. So what do we do with that? What do we do as compensation practitioners, as talent acquisition folks, as other HR business partners, or even line managers? Because really, it all comes down to this. It takes a whole village, right, to pay one person. But really, I think this really shines the light on why it's so important for us as compensation practitioners to have very strong compensation philosophies and very strong approaches and consistent approaches to how we pay people. Now, I'm not recommending that we create step systems or a flat wage for everybody. No, I think you absolutely have to be able to recognize high performers. But just having that information out there for people and letting them negotiate their ranges, that's not how we create an equitable rate of pay. What we really need to do is make sure that we as compensation practitioners have defensible, consistent, and repeatable approaches that are based in very objective measures for employees. And that's going to be a challenge. I mean, that's a different shift from where things are today. And that's a little bit of a shift from where things are, because I think there's always been that you have to have, or we've historically had, that latitude for employee negotiation. And I think that's a healthy thing we have to realize is going to happen just through naturally through the exchange of goods and services. If we consider ourselves a good and the work we provide as a service, there's always going to be that exchange of and that opportunity to negotiate. But I do think that we have to, as compensation practitioners, really kind of lay that foundation for that. And just from my personal experience, what I have seen is the more eyes you have on pay, the more likely you are to make better pay recommendations for employers. I've worked in organizations where, internal salary ranges were not visible, and then they became visible whenever a new HRS system was implemented. And it's funny to me, this is one of the biggest arguments we hear against this Pay Transparency Act is that it's going to cause chaos, and it's not. There were a couple of people that we needed to adjust. We got ahead of it. We adjusted them before things became absolutely transparent. There were a few that we missed, or a few people that disagreed with their rate of pay. We explained the compensation philosophy to them. We explained why they were being paid what they were being paid and how they could earn more. And that's how we took care of it. There was no chaos. There was no mass quitting. It was an opportunity for us to explain to people. There was some work that had to be done, absolutely, but there was no chaos, which is what I keep hearing in articles that are anti these pay transparency tools. And I think that people sometimes underestimate the value of an educated workforce or the value of sharing. And I think that people sometimes underestimate employees' willingness to understand kind of where they're paid. They may disagree with it, or they may want more. I mean, who doesn't want more? But if they understand it, they're much less likely to cause that chaos. And so actually, we had a poll about this not too long ago. And the question was regarding posting our salary ranges. Our organization absolutely will not, only will if required, will for some jobs and will for all jobs. And 8% of about 250 votes at the time that this was, I captured it. 259 people, or 8% of those, said they absolutely will not post ranges. 61%, no surprise, said they will if required. But then about 31% said they will for some or all of their jobs. So that's a pretty significant uptick from what we've seen in the past. And I think we're going to start to see this becoming much more prevalent. And I think that's important, because I think what we're finding is, another poll that I had was, is it harder to hire for professional level roles? Is it harder to hire or retain people? What we're finding is it's harder to retain people. And I think a big piece of that pay transparency comes from, if I, as an employee, if I don't understand why I'm being paid, or if I feel like someone else is earning more than me and that's not fair, I'm much more likely to feel that I'm being treated unfairly and start to go look for other opportunities. So if we think about it being hard to retain people, our retention strategy is to educate and provide some of that transparency so people understand where their rates of pay are. So I think those are some of the key things that are top of mind for this week. So a couple other just points of, I think, worth mentioning is that I will be speaking at the World at Work conference later this, I guess it's all 3 weeks now. So if you're there, I'd love to, shoot me a note. It'd be great to catch up if you're over at the World at Work conference in Atlanta this year. Let's see, we've made a couple updates to CompTool. We've got a couple of videos out there now on our LinkedIn page where the pages update almost instantaneously. Literally as fast as you can click the buttons, the pages will change. So that's been a really exciting update. I have seen other solutions, worked with other solutions, and know kind of changing pages as they load takes a long time. So we're really proud of that one. And then I got off a call today with some pay transparency with, I'm reading the comments over on the side. I got off the phone today with some of our developers. So we're all remote, and looking at what some of the updates for Squirrel 2 are. Oh man, they are going to be exciting. So we're really excited to roll that out too. But yeah, I think just a couple other things too is, coming back to the pay transparency thing, pay transparency has to go hand in hand with educating employees how to understand their pay. It's 100%. We absolutely have to be doing this. Otherwise, you're not. I don't know that I ever agree you're going to have absolute chaos. The local governments have been doing this forever. Public organizations, cities, federal, state, universities, you can go look it up. Every single person's pay by name is out there. I can guarantee almost every newspaper has almost a searchable database where you can go find a person who works at a university, a public university, find out what they're making. There's no chaos at universities. It's generally understood. There's no chaos at cities, and granted, public sector, private sector, very different. But there is no chaos. It's a hard conversation at first, but after you've kind of pulled the Band-Aid off, it's actually pretty easy to manage, and actually makes for a much better comp program that does provide a much better, I think, and more equitable pay program. So anywho, well, that's kind of all we've got for today's CompTool Tuesday. So appreciate everyone joining. And again, I'll see you at World at Work if you're going to be there. Shoot me a note if you are there, and we'll look forward to catching up then. Otherwise, I will see you next Tuesday at this time. Thanks, everybody, and take care.